don't need it. It's okay. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear? Go. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
The topic this morning is a song that Sri Krishna was very fond of, and I have requested Devalina to sing that song, and then we'll have a little discussion about it. The English translation of the song is "All that exists art thou. I join my heart to thee, all that exists art thou." Oh, Devalina. Yeah, because YouTubers won't hear it.
तुझसे हमने दिल को लगाया, जो कुछ है सो तू ही है। एक तुझको अपना पाया, जो कुछ है सो तू ही है। तुझसे हमने दिल को लगाया, जो कुछ है सो तू ही है। एक तुझको अपना पाया, जो कुछ है सो तू ही है। सबके मकान दिल का मकीम तू, कौन सा दिल है जिसमें नहीं तू। हर एक दिल में तू ही समाया, जो कुछ है सो तू ही है। तुझसे हमने दिल को लगाया, जो कुछ है सो तू ही है। एक तुझको अपना पाया, जो कुछ है सो तू ही है। क्या मलायक क्या इंसान, क्या हिंदू क्या मुसलमान, जिसे चाहा तूने बनाया, जो कुछ है सो तू ही है। जो कुछ है सो तू ही है। एक तुझको अपना पाया, जो कुछ है सो तू ही है। तुझसे हमने दिल को लगाया, जो कुछ है सो तू ही है। एक तुझको अपना पाया, जो कुछ है सो तू ही है। काबे में क्या देवल में क्या, तेरी परवरिश होगी सब जहाँ। आगे तेरे सिर सब ने झुकाया, जो कुछ है सो तू ही है। सोचा समझा देखा भला तू, जैसा न कोई ढूंढ निकाला। अब ये ज़फ़र में समझ, अब ये समझ में ज़फ़र के आया, जो कुछ है सो तू ही है। तुझसे हमने दिल को लगाया, जो कुछ है सो तू ही है। एक तुझको अपना पाया, जो कुछ है सो तू ही है।
This particular song is one that was one of the favorite songs of Sri Ramakrishna, and we can almost say towards the end his absolute favorite song. He probably never heard it until very close to the end of his life. It was probably part of the Brahmo Samaj songbook. It's not in Bengali. It's Urdu song, a little unusual that it would be sung at that time, but not terribly unusual. So I wanted it first, the very deep spiritual, philosophical, spiritual, devotional significance to it, but I wanted to go through a little bit of the history of this song and this type of song. If we just think of the title, All That Exists Are Thou, it's an odd concept. We can say all that exists is God, or something, or all that exists, or Thou, Tui. A very intimate type of way of speaking to the beloved. This is really part of, we can almost say, a Sufi type of tradition. This song was composed by someone by the name of Zafar. And probably he was the last Mughal emperor of India. There was one Zafar who was known to be a poet and everything. And if we look at the tradition of the Mughal Empire in India, is something a little unusual. There's an Akbar, and I didn't know all of this before. I actually found out about this yesterday. I did a little research. That, of course, we're all Muslim, but he had a great respect for all religions and believed in the truth of all religions, and almost we can say founded his own religion. It was, I have the name of it, it was called Din Ilahi, the religion of God. Yeah, Din Ilahi. Did anyone hear of this? You know about this? Yeah. It didn't really take off or anything, but he was extremely liberal. We think of sometimes this Muslim Mughal empire as being extremely exclusive and intolerant of other faiths and everything. He was the opposite. And in a sense, he almost left Islam to start this own religion, but it was one that was all embracing and a religion of love, and similar to the Sufi tradition within Islam. The Sufi tradition was very vibrant for many years. I think this Rumi was probably the most famous. It's 13th century, so a very old type of tradition, and very universal and based on a combination of understanding of God as beyond all qualities and formless and absolute and everything, and yet God is the beloved. So there's a very loving type of relationship. So we find that in this title, All That Exists But Thou. You can say everything that, the Vedantic terms, everything that exists is Brahman. So I wouldn't call it Brahma, but only taking then Brahman, and instead of that, saying the beloved. All that exists is wherever we look, we see the face of the beloved. That type of idea. So if we go through the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, we find that there are 3 different occasions where this song is sung. And that means that probably Thakur heard it many more times, because this is only when M was present. And this Narendra had learned to sing it, so he probably heard it many other times than that. But what we know is that it was first mentioned at the singing of this June 13th, 1885. So this is just about a year, a little over a year before Thakur passed away. And this date is significant because this is when we first hear about Thakur's throat, sore throat and everything, which we know turns out to be cancer. So it's a very significant date. And, the first time it was sung by Trailokya-nath Sanya. He was the, before Tagore started writing, the most famous composer of the Brahma Samaj and singer, and very devoted to Sri Ramakrishna. Thakur liked him very much. He was very much influenced by Sri Ramakrishna. Before that, the Brahma Samaj was a little bit dry. That everything was kind of Upanishadic Brahman and everything. And then after contact with Sri Ramakrishna, he started writing songs like "Oh Mother, Make Me Mad with Thy Love," "My Deva Pagupari." So he was very much influenced by that. So this is probably the first time that Sri Ramakrishna heard this song, and he was delighted with it. Now remember, Sri Ramakrishna, he could understand Hindi.
Yes.
Yeah, because when he was very young, many of the sadhus from North India would come on their way to Puri. For some reason, this Kamarpur was one of the ways that they would travel. And this Laha family had a little guest house, an alms house and everything. Sadhus would stay there, mostly Hindi speakers. And then with Totapuri.
Total Punjabi.
Yeah, Punjabi. So Thakur maybe understood Punjabi also. Yeah. So we have a strong connection. Yeah. Yeah, with Punjab. Yeah. So all of our Punjabi devotees should feel very proud that Sri Ramakrishna is Vedanta Guru, big strong Punjabi man. Totapuri. They can call it a bit. Yeah. So, this is the first time. Then we see two other times. Second time is October 24th, 1885. Now Narendra is singing, or Swami Vivekananda. And probably because it was part of the Brahma Samaj songbook, he had learned it at that point. These are all, those people who won't be interested. I like these little details. Gives us some historical perspective on the whole thing. And after this, we read that whenever Narendra Swami Vivekananda, his most beloved disciple, Thakur loved to hear him sing, that whenever he would sing some songs, at the very end, Thakur would say to him, "Now sing that one." He didn't even give the name. Perhaps he didn't remember the title or anything like that. It meant this song. So it shows how much Thakur appreciated the sentiments of this, seeing God everywhere, and in a very personal way, having that type of relationship. And even the first line, joining our hearts to God. To say, "Humne dil ko lagaya," that I join my heart to you, that jo kuch hai, whatever exists, that I see, he used to say, it's the Divine Mother everywhere. The Divine Mother has become all this. So the song that perfectly matched his spiritual attitude. And he never got tired of hearing this song. So I want to start out with just giving a full translation. This is what we find in Swami Nikhilananda's translation in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. "I've joined my heart to thee, all that exists art thou. Thee only have I found, for thou art all that exists. O Lord, beloved of my heart, thou art the home of all, where indeed is the heart in which thou dost not dwell. Thou hast entered every heart, all that exists art thou. Whether sage or fool, whether Hindu or Muslim." Now remember, this is a Muslim writer. Maybe belong to this new Akbar religion or something like that. This is that very liberal Sufi tradition. We'll see there's a long tradition, many other authors like that. "Whether sage or fool, whether Hindu or Muslim, thou makest them as thou wilt, all that exists art thou. Thy presence is everywhere, whether in heaven or in Kaaba. This is where now Saudi Arabia, holy place for Islam. Before thee all must bow, for thou art all that exists. From earth below to the highest heaven, from heaven to deepest earth, I see thee wherever I look. All that exists art thou. Pondering, I have understood, I have seen it beyond a doubt. I find not a single thing that may be compared to thee. To Zafar it has been revealed that thou art all that exists. So this is the Zafar. We don't know much about him. As I say, probably it's this last Mughal emperor of India who was known to be a poet. So it must, a lot of the songs we only know because they include their name at the end. There's Ram Prasad songs over that, so we know that he was the author. And he was obviously someone very, very tolerant. The relationship between Hindus and Muslims in India went through so many different changes. In the beginning it was a rather violent thing when they first came in and everything, and then there were periods like this period under Akbar where more or less got along. So all different types of relationships between the different communities in India. Swami Vivekananda, he says that when he was a boy, he had a lot of Muslim friends, and that when they would break the fast for Eid, that all Hindu was, they would go and join them, and when they would have their big Durga Puja celebration, his Muslim friends would also come. It is not that way anymore, unfortunately. There will be some places, of course, but things are not quite as smooth as they were at that time.
There was that, we had so many Muslim friends in Pakistan before that. Actually, it was a Muslim who saved my family, my ancestors. So we were doing it there, Eid, they were doing our Diwali.
Yes.
So very common,
Yeah.
very Bisakhi, all those, we were same, but on both ends.
So we'll find both sides.
Yeah.
And then we'll find very orthodox Muslims that think everything is a heresy and idolatry, and very orthodox Hindus who say, no, we can't touch you, we'll have to go bathe and everything. So it'll be both ways. But during this one particular period, we had this train of thought that everyone is worshiping the same God. And we find it goes way back. All of the great poet saints that we have in India, Kabir, Nanak, Tulsi, all of them were very, very liberal. They didn't believe in caste, things like that. This really is a great reminder of the life of Kabir. This Kabir, he was, of course you know, one of the greatest composers and great devotee, and belonged to the Muslim weaver caste, or weaver community, we can say, but claimed equally and beloved equally by Hindus and Muslims. And his story is very interesting. Somehow he had this tremendous desire to become a disciple of this great Hindu saint, Ramananda. You know the story. And he approached him, and he wasn't willing, so he came upon a plan that he knew that this Ramananda, every morning, he would go for his bath in the Ganges in Benares. Early morning when it's still dark out. So he knew the steps that he walked down. So early morning, he laid down on the steps. So that when this Ramananda came, that his foot touched his body, and he almost slipped and screamed out, Ram Ram. Yeah. Ram Ram. And so this Kabir said, now I'm your disciple, you've given me the mantra, and you've allowed me to touch your holy feet. So, and he composed so many beautiful songs, and as I say, equally beloved. His death was a very interesting thing, and there's a wonderful story. One of the most beloved legends associated with Kabir is told of his funeral. Kabir's disciples disputed over the Muslims wanted to bury him, and the Hindus wanted to cremate him, because they both accepted him as a great saint. Then, as they were arguing, Kabir appeared to the disciples and told them to lift the burial shroud. So he was covered with a sheet. And when they did so, they saw that they were just flowers. Very fragrant flowers were lying there. And they divided the flowers, and half of them were buried, according to the Muslim traditions, and half of them were cremated. So as I say, this is a kind of a common theme. There were so many, the Indian tradition is fantastic. Somehow all of these saints were great singers and composers. There's so many. Even Mirabai, Tulsidas, Surdas, Guru Nanak, so many of them. Guru Nanak, the whole Sikh tradition, most of this Guru Granth Sahib, or the songs composed by Guru Nanak. A good number of them. So, very wonderful tradition. Ram Prasad, Kamalakanta. They were very saintly people, but they could compose beautiful poetry at the same time and sing and everything. So a really fantastic tradition. We have it with some of the Sufi saints, as I said, Rumi and others, but otherwise in the West we don't have so much of that tradition. We have, of course, the Psalms of David and other things, but in India it's really a very special thing that the people who composed these songs were great souls, realized souls. So, this Zafar, we don't know much about him, but he seemed to belong to the same very liberal, tolerant type of tradition. Saw God everywhere, didn't like these distinctions, these labels. This is a Hindu, this is a Muslim, this is Christian, this is Sikh, everything like that. And the song itself, during that period, there was, among Hindus, there was a great appreciation for Persian literature. You may remember Swamiji's father. His favorite poet was the Hafiz, just like our Swami C. He would always quote from Hafiz. And so many of these highly educated Hindus would learn Persian so that they could read that type of poetry and everything. And so a song like this is not so unusual that this would find its way into the Brahmo songbook. So Swamiji must have heard it there. Swamiji had an unbelievable memory. We know that. If he would hear a song once or twice, everything would be committed to him. Sri Ramakrishna, this I find this so fascinating. How many songs he knew without reading. Not that there was a book and he read it and memorized it. Just hearing it a few times. How many songs? Some long songs. Huh? How? What fantastic memory that he had. So Swamiji obviously learned this song and sang it for Sri Ramakrishna. And Sri Ramakrishna, we have to remember also, practiced Islamic sadhana according to the Sufi tradition. The one Govinda Roy came, Hindu, but he was initiated into the Sufi tradition, the Dervish tradition, the Rumi tradition. And Sri Ramakrishna practiced that. He lived like a Muslim. That means he didn't stay in his room, he didn't go to the temple, he dressed like a Muslim, he ate according to their cooking and everything, and had some vision of Muhammad after a few days and everything. So he had great respect for Islamic sadhana and spiritual practice. He used to say that look at the Muslims 5 times a day, no matter what. No matter what, they'll stop everything 5 times a day and do their namaz, do their prayer. I saw this. I traveled to many Muslim countries that if you're on a bus, something like that, at exactly the time for prayer, the bus will stop. Everyone will go out. They'll take their chadar, they'll put it on the ground, and they'll do their prayer. I was once on a bus in Iran. At that time, it was under the Shah, and they were more or less a secular country. But there were some Pakistanis on the bus, and they were ready to kill the bus driver. They said, "You stop the bus right now." So what could they do? So they stopped it, and they got out, and they did the namaz, and they came back. And, yeah. So I've seen, even in Bangladesh, wherever you go on a train, there'll be one compartment that'll be for namaz. If there's I traveled by ship, the steamer will be going down, and same thing, 5 times a day, there'll be one area, everybody goes and they'll do. So Thakur was very much impressed with that, regularity in spiritual practice. So let's get to the meaning of the song. This is the most important thing, and why it was the idea was so dear to Sri Ramakrishna, how it incorporated so many aspects of his spiritual outlook on life. One is how do we look upon this visible universe? In Vedanta, this is a very big question. That is it a creation of God? Is it a projection out of Brahman? Is it some false appearance? Is it like a dream? There are all different ways of looking at it. The very strict jnanis will say that there's no substance to it, that it has some type of appearance or something dreamlike, and dualists will say, no, this is creation of God, or projection out of God, and then there'll be these highly devotional mystics who will see everything as a manifestation of the divine, of the beloved. So we have all these different views, and really there's no one conclusive understanding of this universe, because we only know this universe through our mind. What it is in itself, there's no possible way of knowing, because we only know it as we experience it. We experience this world because we have senses that allow us to experience it this way. Swamiji makes an interesting statement. He said if we had a sense that could experience electricity, we would see electricity, it's in the air. Or if we think about hearing, we take it for granted that we can hear any sound, but there are all these sounds above our range of hearing that we can't hear. You all know what a dog whistle is. Dog whistle is pitched at such a high pitch that human beings can't hear it, but dogs can hear it. Now, is it a sound or not a sound? Just because we can't hear it doesn't mean it's not a sound. So we're limited by our senses and everything. Color. Do we know what color looks like to anybody else? There's some colorblind people, animals that only see in black and white. So what this universe actually is, without our perception of it, is impossible to know. Impossible to know. So this is all the type of speculation. And we may think that what difference does it make really? If it's a dream, we have to live with it and we have to deal with it anyhow. So I used to think like that a little bit, that, I get involved with this type of question. But when we see the joy that comes, those who have that mystical vision, they're seeing God everywhere. We look at Sri Ramakrishna, he's almost in ecstasy. We're seeing everything as a manifestation of the divine. What joy it brings, and how it changes our whole relationship with the world and relationship with other people. So, and Sri Ramakrishna, these aren't really philosophical positions. These are spiritual attitudes, because sometimes he would say, I see everything as consciousness itself. Chidghana is a type of congealed consciousness. If we think of clouds in the sky, what is a cloud? It's nothing but the sky itself, only the moisture and other things just get condensed enough so that it appears to be something solid. So he sees everything consciousness that somehow congeals into this universe. Chidghana, or Chinmaya, something like that. But the other times you would say, I see Brahman alone. Everything is the absolute, I see like that. Other times he would say, I see all this a manifestation of Shakti, the divine power. And other times he would say, I see this is a manifestation of my divine mother. Now, are they different philosophical positions? No. For Sri Ramakrishna, because he saw this oneness between impersonal absolute and personal God. Suppose we have a dream, and somebody asks us, who had the dream? Was it the sleeper or was it the dreamer who dreamt the dream. What will we say? They're not two different people. How do you make a distinction? That was me. I fell asleep, I was sleeping, I had a dream, I was dreaming. They're not two different people. One is the personal God, the other is the impersonal absolute. So for Swami Krishna, there was no distinction that way. So we find in the Upanishads this famous statement, Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. All this is verily this absolute, pure, conscious reality. Whatever we see is nothing but this absolute Brahman, only seen through this veil of Maya somehow. There's a very complex philosophical type of position that they take, but for Sri Ramakrishna, he accepted the reality of this universe, only said it's transitory, it is passing. It is dreamlike. It just, if we stop and think that whole lifetime is going by and it seems like a few seconds. We look back on our life and we wonder how dreamlike everything seems. I sometimes think that if in the dream we remembered the waking state, and if the waking state we didn't remember the dream, that we would think the dream state was the real state and the waking state was the dream state. It's also relative. And while we have a dream, it seems 100% real. We wake up, we dismiss it. It's just a dream. So, for Sri Ramakrishna, he didn't get too much involved in all the metaphysics. He simply said, it's a passing show. Everything is transitory. Not much really to hold on to. That was one view, but the other view was that I see the Divine Mother has become all this. So, that would be in that kind of ecstatic mood that he would go through. So Thakur said, yes, it's good for us to make a distinction between that which is real and that which is transitory and everything. That this is during the period of spiritual practice. Nowadays, a lot of people like to argue, did Thakur differ from Shankaracharya in his point of view? Shankaracharya is always saying that this world is unreal, Brahman alone is real. And Sri Ramakrishna is saying that this world is a manifestation of God. So they have a different position. Actually, Sri Ramakrishna accepted Shankaracharya's position. At the time of spiritual practice, he said, the time of sadhana, we have to, because we've gotten mixed up. That I've mixed up the self with the mind, the body, and the senses, and we have to make that distinction, which is the real, that means witnessing consciousness, and which is the object of consciousness. We have to make that distinction to get to the roof. Then we see that the divine itself has become all of this. Whether this is a projection from God, it all has to go back. That it has a divine source. So this was his understanding. So he says, this is from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, in the beginning, when one reasons following the Vedanta method of not this, he realizes that Brahman is not the living beings, not the universe, not the 24 cosmic principles. All these things become like dreams to him. Then comes the affirmation of what has been denied. He feels that God himself has become the universe and all living beings. First of all, you must discriminate following the method of neti neti. Not this, not this. He is not the five elements, not the sense organs, not the mind, nor the intelligence, nor the ego. He is beyond all these cosmic principles. You want to climb to the roof, then you must eliminate and leave behind all the steps one by one. The steps are by no means the roof, but after reaching the roof, you find that the steps are made of the same material, brick, lime, and brick dust, as the roof. It is the Supreme Brahman that has become the universe and its living beings, and the 24 cosmic principles. This was the distinction that Sri Ramakrishna made between jnana and vijnana. He says that knowledge is that Brahman is the only ultimate reality. Vijnana is to see that this Brahman has become all of this. So then we don't, he's in beginning negation, and then affirmation. The thing that we deny as being asat, unreal. We find out is nothing but that same reality, only seen with some projection on top of it. We may not understand it, but afterwards, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, I see, as if I'm looking at artificial fruit, everything made of wax, that one ultimate reality. But I know that it's all one. For they give the example of jewelry, that in the ancient India, even today to a large extent, everything was gold. It was the same substance, but it was different name and form. Different name and form. So some are bracelets, some are anklets, some are nose rings, but it's all the same. That same reality, and that's the essence of everything. So the gold. So he could see that beyond the name and form was that one essential reality, that oneness was there. So Sri Ramakrishna's vision, there were two elements to it. One, he saw that everything was a manifestation of the divine. Second thing was, he saw that the individual within was one with the divine. So he would say, I see that as if these are all pillowcases, all these bodies and everything. Inside is nothing but God. I see God alone dwelling within. Or I see these individual souls bobbing up and down like waves on this ocean of consciousness. This was his vision. This wasn't just some philosophical type of thing. He lived in that realm. It was very nice. I'll get to it. Another one of the statements that he made. So this is that distinction between jnana and vijnana. He says jnana is the realization of the self through the process of neti, not this, not this. One goes into samadhi. That means that everything disappears at that time. That one is merged in that ultimate reality. No sense of I, no sense of the world, no sense of anything. Just completely merging. One goes into samadhi through this process of elimination and realizes the self. But vijnana means knowledge with a greater fullness. Some have heard of milk, some have seen milk, and some have drunk milk. He who has merely heard of it is ignorant, ajnana. He who has seen it is a jnani, but he who has drunk it is a vijnani. That is to say, he has a fuller knowledge of it. After having the vision of God, now, this is another thing for the vijnani, one talks to him as if he were an intimate relative. That is vijnana. So, for Sri Ramakrishna, those who have come down from the highest type of realization, if they're they follow the path of knowledge, then they'll see this world as a little bit dreamlike, that they won't have any attachment to anything. But if they have the heart of a devotee, then they'll see God dwelling everywhere and have that intimate relation with the personal God. Now, we find an interesting phenomenon that this concept of Brahman in the Upanishads is really impersonal. There's no real personal God, loving God that we pray to. It's all this impersonal, absolute reality. When we get to later scriptures, the Bhagavad Gita, we find that everything that's said about this Nirguna Brahman can be said about personal God, or Ishvara. I'll give you two examples. That when Sri Krishna, he's talking about the realization of the jnani. What is the realization of the jnani? He says, Vasudeva Sarvam Iti. Now, this is that same, that the realization that Brahman alone is all this, but not saying Brahman alone is all this. Vasudeva means the son of Vasudeva, means Krishna, means personal God. So he sees that everything is the personal God. Then in chapter 13, when Sri Krishna is explaining about the Kshetrajna, the knower of the field, we take this to be the witnessing consciousness. It's perfectly impersonal. Witnessing consciousness is just like the mirror. It doesn't add anything to it. It's just pure awareness. But when he's asked, who is this this Sakti, who is this, the knower of the field. He says, no me to be the knower of the field, personal God. So we find this same idea that that which is the transcendent, infinite, absolute reality is also the same personal God. The sleeper and the dreamer, one and the same. So Sri Ramakrishna, he liked this idea, and it appealed to him, and it was part of his experience. It wasn't just that it appealed to him, that he saw the face of the beloved everywhere, saw the Divine Mother everywhere. And this was the result of his spiritual attitude, doing all of his spiritual practice, and his direct realization. There was a conversation between Sri Ramakrishna and Keshav Chandra Sen. Keshav Sen was the leader of the Brahma Samaj at that time. He said, on attaining perfect knowledge, one sees only consciousness everywhere. So this is, as I say, he had different outlooks. This is that infinite, absolute, impersonal, pure consciousness. One sees consciousness everywhere. The same perfect knowledge again makes him realize that the one consciousness has become the universe and its living beings and the 24 cosmic principles. So this is one attitude. This is that Brahman, that is pure consciousness. And then again, he was speaking to M. Attaining that love, this is that divine love, the devotee sees everything full of spirit and consciousness. To him, Krishna is consciousness, and the sacred abode is consciousness. The devotee too is consciousness. Everything is consciousness. So he sometimes would explain it that I see everything as Mother herself. I see everything as a manifestation of Brahman. This idea of Chidghana, that everything is congealed consciousness. And he would have different visions. One of the great things about the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna is that we get an insight into his personal mystical experiences. It's a very rare thing. And he only explained these things to us so that we would have faith in them. Otherwise, well, how will we know any of these things? General teaching is that we shouldn't say anything about our spiritual experiences. That should be a very private thing. Maybe we can tell to our guru or something. We keep them sacred within the heart. His situation was the exact opposite. That freely he told everything about his experiences so that we would understand that there is a realm beyond our ordinary experience and understanding, that it's true. So this is such a valuable thing, constantly telling us his experiences. So he says to M, do you know what I see right now? I see that it is God himself who has become all this. Sometimes he would let Ishwa. That means the personal God. This is different from I see that everything is Brahman. No. Dreamer and sleeper. Same reality. I see that it is God himself who has become all this. It seems to me that man and other living beings are made of leather, and that it is God himself who, dwelling inside these leather cases, moves the hands, the feet, the heads. I had a similar vision once before, when I saw houses, gardens, roads, men, cattle, all made of one substance. It was as if they were all made of wax. Then he makes a tremendous statement that we have to remember that he knew he was dying at that time, that he had this throat cancer, and he was told this is an incurable disease. This is in Kashipur. He says, I see that it is God himself who has become the block, the executioner, and the victim for the sacrifice. This is reference to the goat sacrifice that was done in the Kali temple. At that, Sri Ramakrishna went into Samadhi. On regaining normal consciousness, he looked at Latu. Latu was one of his future monastic disciples that served him so much and loved him so much, and Thakur loved him equally. He said, there's Loto. He bends his head, resting it on the palm of his hand. I see that it is God himself who rests his head on his hand. During this period, Sri Ramakrishna, he said that Mother has shown me that Don't try to see God in any state of ecstasy. Don't worry about seeing God in the image or anything like that. See God dwelling in all beings. And he used to say to them, "Tumi jano or na jano, tumi ram." Whether you know it or not, God dwells within each and every person. Whether you know it or not, you are that God. He used to say that to be that because he lived in that realm. So these are two things. One, God dwelling within everything and God becoming everything. So we have a dream. The dream is a projection out of the mind of the dreamer, and yet the dreamer himself is the reality of the individual in the dream. So we get this kind of general idea that God dwelling within, but sometimes it was very specific that Thakur saw the Divine Mother, because that was his main, when he thought of God, he thought of Mother. He worshipped God as Mother, and it wasn't this image of Kali with 4 arms. He used to say, my mother Kali is the same as your Brahman. He could say to Narendra, says Naren, that the one that you call the Brahman, I call Kali, only that Shakti is there. So for him, it was the attitude of the loving mother that he felt within his heart. The divine presence was like the mother looking over the children. So he said, the Divine Mother revealed to me in the Kali temple that it was she who has become everything. And remember the song, all that exists art thou. This is the attitude that the Zafar had. I see, because he's addressing God. And they used to address God as the beloved. So in a sense, as mother. Only not mother, we can say really as the beloved. A little bit like the mother Baba in Hindu tradition, as the lover and the beloved. So addressing, I see all that exists are thou. He's saying the mother, I see all that exists are thou. She has become everything. She showed me that everything was sort of consciousness. The image of Kali was consciousness. The altar was consciousness. The water vessels were consciousness. The door sill was consciousness. All was consciousness. I found everything inside the room soaked, as it were, in bliss. The bliss of God. I saw a wicked man in front of the Kali temple, but in him also I saw the power of the Divine Mother vibrating. Sometimes he would say, I see everything a manifestation of Shakti. These are all different ways of explaining it. I saw the power of the Divine Mother vibrating. That is why I fed a cat with the food that was to be offered to the Divine Mother. I clearly perceived that all this was the Divine Mother, even the cat. So now he's just personalizing it even more. In the beginning, just pure consciousness, or Brahman, and then Ishvara, personal God, now Mother. And become all this. We have that beautiful song of Ram Prasad that he says that everything I see is a manifestation of your mother. When I walk around the town, I'm circumambulating my mother Kali. When I lie down to sleep, I'm making pranam to my mother Kali. It's a beautiful song. Yeah. Many of our monks were very fond of that. If you read Toward the Goal Supreme, Swami Virajananda, yeah, he quotes from that song and talks about that also.
Here's a book
Yeah.
for sale.
You'll find it there.
For sale. $6 only.
Yeah. So Sri Ramakrishna, $6. If you're nice to her, she'll sell it for $5.
Okay, maybe if you say
Yeah.
so.
If you give a donation, also.
But I have only 2 books left.
Only 2 books left. Oh, then it'll have to be $10 each.
Out
That's
of 12,
too
I have 2 books left. It's a very nice book.
So all of these experiences Ramakrishna had, when he's talking about first you see everything is unreal, when he had that first vision in the Kali temple, that everything disappeared. Exactly what we read in this Vivek Chudamani. There's a very beautiful verse, this Kwagatam Kenavanitam, that, oh, where did this universe go? Who took it away? He said, just a second ago I saw it, now it doesn't exist anymore. You know, what a strange thing. What is that? So Swami Krishna said the same thing. He said, the buildings with their different parts, the temples and everything else vanished from my sight. leaving no trace whatsoever. And in their stead I saw a limitless, infinite, effulgent ocean of consciousness. This is what will lead some to say this universe is unreal. But after coming down again, then he sees this other vision. Mother has become everything. Now I want to start one final point. That is, we've only discussed this this part, all that exists art thou. But the first part, that I've joined my heart to thee. To say, that I've joined my heart to thee. That this is the key to all of this. That joining the heart, this is the way the devotee attains the state of oneness. We think of oneness as something that is for the jnani, that absolute oneness, that I am that self, that this Atman and Brahman are one and the same. The devotee has a different path for it, that the lover and the beloved reach such a state of union that they can hardly distinguish one from the other. So I join my heart to thee, that means I've made it one. All that exists art thou. This is the key to the whole thing, that to feel this intense oneness, which transforms the ego completely. We lose any sense of self apart from our relationship with God, with the beloved, from that point of view. So Sri Ramakrishna really emphasized this idea that we have to eliminate completely this small ego. The sense of I we can eliminate completely, but let that sense of I be the lover and the beloved, that relationship, or mother and child, that relationship, or master and servant, whatever relationship that we like. So Thakur used to say that we want to reach this higher stage, then we have to get rid of this thick, heavy ego that we have, that's so bound to the body and so bound to our selfish desires and everything, and have that very light, fine ego that sees itself only in relationship with God. A very beautiful thing. He gives the example of the cow. It's a very nice illustration. The cow cries, hamba, hamba. This means I, hamba, hamba. That is why it suffers so much. It is yoked to the plow and made to work in rain and sun. Then it may be killed by the butcher. From its hide shoes are made, and also drums, which are mercilessly beaten. Still, it does not escape suffering. At last strings are made out of its entrails for the bows to be used in carding cotton. You've all seen these carders. They'll walk down the street sometimes, they'll go, twing, 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 twing. Everybody knows that if you want a mattress made or pillows made, you can come out and say, okay, yeah, come. Yeah, this is the way they kind of hawk their wares. So at last, strings are made out of the entrails for the bows used in carding cotton. Then it no longer says, hamba, hamba, I, but tu, tu, thou, thou. Only then are its struggles over. So, this is how this devotional path dovetails with this path of knowledge. And it ends up with the state of oneness, and it ends up with that same vision of the Vijnani, of seeing God dwelling everywhere. And it was typical of the Sufi point of view, that they were ecstatic mystics. All mystic traditions had this concept of oneness and union. That Swamiji gave a very beautiful lecture in Madras called The Work Before Us. He says, there was an ancient Persian Sufi poet, maybe Rumi, and one of his poems says, I came to the beloved and beheld the door was closed. I knocked at the door, and from inside a voice came. Who is there? I replied, I am. The door did not open. The second time I came and knocked at the door, and the same voice asked, who is there? It is I. The door did not open. A third time I came, and the same voice asked, who is there? I am thyself, my love. And the door and then one other time in Thousand Island Park. This is part of that Inspired Talks. All of the teachings that he gave in Thousand Island Park are available to us. He quotes again from a poem, Sufi poem, Persian Sufi poem. There was a time when I was a woman and he was a man. Still love grew until there was neither he nor I. Only I remember faintly there was a time when there were two. But love came between and made them one. So this is that I have joined my heart to thee, all that exists art thou. So when this I of the devotee gets lost, then we see the face of the beloved everywhere. This is that idea that so beautifully put in this poem, and why Sri Ramakrishna loved it so much. So I have joined my heart to thee, all that exists art thou. A beautiful blend of path of knowledge and the path of devotion. So we will stop here. If anybody would like to ask any question or make any comment, please feel free. Yes.
Swami, you're doing exactly that 3 steps to get to the
Yes.
Do you mind